Tennessee picked up a transfer portal addition, finally, in wide receiver Amari Jefferson. What is Tennessee getting in Amari Jefferson, the former Baylor school standout? That and a whole lot more. It is your Wednesday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it. This is your Wednesday edition of Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Eric Cain. Can't thank you enough for being here, and can't thank our friends over at FanDuel enough for being a part of the show. You can get $5. You can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed win or lose. New customers over at FanDuel.com to go ahead and get started today. Got a busy show coming up today. Matt Ray's going to chime in on the commitment of Amari Jefferson here in just a moment. Just a little brief comment. We're going to have him on the show tomorrow to talk more of Tennessee football and recruiting in 2026. Going to take a look at the running backs for the 2025 position room in segment 2, and then catch up with Josh Ward Wednesday in segment number 3. All right, so Amari Jefferson, this has kind of been in the works for the last couple of days, and Tennessee came up, was runner-up for Amari Jefferson out of high school in the class of 2024, Baylor School in the Chattanooga area. Amari Jefferson wanted to play for Nick Saban, okay, and it's like he couldn't turn down the commitment, couldn't turn down the opportunity to play for Nick Saban. Well, he signs, and then it's not just him. The rest of that signing class is kind of up a creek without a paddle, right? Because Nick Saban goes ahead and retires, and that's just the nature of the business and the beast, and it's unfortunate for those guys. But, Amari Jefferson, sure, wanted to go to Alabama and all that, wanted to play for Nick Saban. Nick Saban's gone, so he stays in the program for a year. He redshirts. He doesn't play much. He did suffer an injury. He had surgery on his hip at the beginning of November, and I believe that he's going to be just fine. He should be cleared to go and ready to roll for spring practice. But anyway, he did battle with an injury a little bit, but redshirted, was not a factor for Alabama this year. So there's different ways you can look at it. If you're a fan that's just so hungry for, portal action and, needing to add a body and needing to add a playmaker, this is awesome. But also, it's not like you're getting a proven playmaker. Amari Jefferson's very much not proven. And that's okay. That's fine. At the end of the day, you need to replenish that room, and Amari Jefferson is at least another body in there. But there's a lot of skill in there. Matt Ray will chime in on him here in just a moment, but he's a dual sport athlete. He originally, once upon a time, committed to play for Tony Vitello in the Tennessee baseball team, I think when he was a sophomore in high school. And, the further along his recruitment went, he, started the side for football and picked Alabama and all that. But he's kind of built like a running back. He's kind of stocky, 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's got decent speed, decent length, really good in space, at least at the high school level. I'm talking about all in the high school level because he didn't play as a true freshman at Alabama. Makes guys miss in space, pretty good route runner, tracks the ball very well. There's a reason why Tennessee wanted him, right? And Alabama wanted him, and Georgia wanted him. And he was, according to the On3 industry rankings, the 204th overall prospect in the country for the class of 2024, 34th wide receiver, 6th player out of the state of Tennessee. On3 had him as the 207th overall player. 247 had him at 199. So again, there's a pretty consensus line of thinking there for Amari Jefferson. This is big for Tennessee because, number one, it's a body. Number two, it's a guy that you originally liked out of high school an awful lot, that you wanted to be a part of your class. It's just now a year removed. And, more than anything, it's perception, right? Tennessee lost a ton of wide receivers, including Dante Thornton and Brew McCoy to graduation. And Tennessee needed to replenish that room. And Amari Jefferson is step one in that direction. We'll see if Tennessee should not be done in terms of wide receiver in the transfer portal, but we'll see exactly what else Tennessee does in that regard. But this is a really, really good step here. Let's get a word from Matt Ray. What does Matt Ray have to say about the addition for Tennessee from Amari Jefferson?
Yeah, you look back at Amari Jefferson's high school career, a guy that caught over 70 passes, I think over 1,500 yards, several touchdowns, obviously. He was, the D2 AAA Mr. Football Award winner coming out of high school, and a guy that really can do a lot of things. Can line up inside, can line up outside, primarily lined up outside at Baylor, but really moved around. They motioned him around a lot, did a lot of different things with him. He's got a pretty stocky, sturdy frame at 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's thick. He's tough to run through for defenders. So he's a guy that can do a lot of different things. Really sure-handed, reliable coming across the middle, but can get to the sticks, sit down, and absorb a hit and catch the football. And then really nice with his ability to run after the catch and blocking out on the perimeter, which we know, something that Tennessee just covets in their outside wide receivers.
Again, that was Matt Ray on Amari Jefferson. We'll have more from Matt Ray on tomorrow's show. Plenty more on the 2026 recruiting class and a little bit more about this wide receiver room. That's what you have to look forward to on Thursday's show. But yeah, good stuff there from Matt. Again, 6 foot, 200 pounds for Amari Jefferson. He was really, really good at Baylor. As a junior, he hauled in 72 passes, 1,370 yards, and 17 touchdowns. As a senior, 1,401 yards, 74 passes, so almost identical records, or almost identical numbers there in terms of passes and receiving yards. 20 touchdowns as a senior. He won the Tennessee Titans Mr. Football Award for Division II Class 3A as a senior in 2023. In fact, there were 3 members of the Tennessee football team who were Mr. Tennessee Titans Football Award winners in 2023. You have Redarius Jackson, Boo Carter, and Amari Jefferson. All 3 of those guys won for their respected classifications the Mr. Football Award. So I think that's pretty cool. So again, I'm excited to see what Jefferson can turn into. Again, it's kind of like low risk, high reward. He's got 4 years of eligibility, which is great. This is essentially like getting somebody in your signing class that you really, really wanted, just a year removed, and he'll get healthy. Hopefully he'll be a big participant in spring practice. He'll learn the ropes and all that, and Tennessee will have another guy that they can at least count on. We'll see what he's made of. I'm intrigued to see what else Tennessee does in this room. Again, you are losing Dante Thornton, you're losing Brew McCoy, you've lost Squirrel White, Chaz Nimrod, Caleb Webb, Nathan Leacock, Nate Spillman. So 4 scholarship. 6 scholarship altogether if you include McCoy and Thornton and then a walk-on. And you're going to pair Amari Jefferson with Mike Matthews, Chris Brazzell, Braylon Staley, and then incoming new freshmen Travis Smith, Redarius Jackson, and Joakim Dotson. And Tennessee needs to go ahead and get another body or 2 in that room. So, second transfer portal commitment for Tennessee, joining Wendell Moy on the offensive line. That is Amari Jefferson, who committed to the University of Tennessee on Tuesday afternoon. All right, we'll take a look at the running back position when we come back in segment number 2. Spoilers in segment 3, not spoilers, just a heads up, I guess. I recorded segment number 3 with Josh Ward before the commitment of Amari Jefferson, so when we talk about the transfer portal and the lack thereof movement, that was obviously before Amari Jefferson went ahead and made it official. So all that and more as we continue on with this Wednesday edition of Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me before. I had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's your subscriptions, your spending habits, or even goals that you want to hit on this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions today and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That is rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Hey guys, welcome back in your Wednesday morning edition of Locked On Vols. I am Eric Cain, and really appreciate Matt Ray for stopping by the show and giving us some of his knowledge on Tennessee recruiting and kind of the direction now as we officially turn the page to 2026. We got Josh Ward coming up for Ward Wednesday in segment number 3. I'm here in the bridge segment. I do want to get back to our series on looking ahead to the position groups. I don't want to call these position previews because certainly the season is forever away. Spring practice is still a little ways away, but kind of where the position groups are right now at current standing. After roster management took place, you had defectors to the transfer portal, you had guys who graduated, guys who declared for the NFL draft, and sure, it's still ongoing in terms of the transfer portal additions, okay, and it will be throughout the month of January, even though it's just super, super slow right now. But kind of where are we now in terms of the groups? We've talked tight ends. We've talked offensive line. Today, I want to talk running back, stay on the offensive side of the football. And obviously, the biggest departure is that of Dylan Sampson. I mean, Dylan Sampson, he was SEC Player of the Year. Okay, he was an All-American. He was an All-SEC back. broke several individual program records. His 1,491 rushing yards was a single-season program record. His 22 rushing touchdowns was a single-season program record. Against against Mississippi State, actually. He became the 20th running back to rush for over 1,000 yards in Tennessee football history. He ran for 149 on that day on 30 carries. He rushed for 100 or more yards in 10 of the 13 games this year, 130 or more yards in 6 games. I mean, that's just automatic, man. He was like an ATM, right? He had multiple rushing touchdowns in 7 games, including 3 with 3 touchdowns or more. Not bad. The season finale against Vanderbilt, he ran for a season high and a career high, 178 yards. And, of course, that win helped Tennessee punch its ticket to the 12-team college football playoffs. An injury late in that football game really kind of sidelined him for the majority of the Ohio State college football playoff game. And don't get me wrong, like I'm not trying to diminish anytime you lose a player like that. And, I mean, he was a non-factor in the game. He played, like, the first 2 series of the game. Didn't see him again. He came back in for a series in the third quarter. They threw him a pass. He was just a non-factor. So I'm not trying to diminish when you lose a player like that, but I mean, gosh, even if they had him on that day, I mean, would he have made a difference? I mean, Ohio State was just the Buckeyes' day, but nonetheless, an injury late in that Vanderbilt game kind of pretty much took him out of the equation for the Ohio State playoff game, which was really, really unfortunate. And that's, is not a great way that you want to end your Tennessee career. But any way you want to spin it, Dylan Sampson was one of the best players in all college football this year. It's a shame that he wasn't a finalist for the Doak Walker Award. Again, I've talked about the laziness of that committee just because all they did was stat gaze, and literally all they did was go to NCAA.com or collegefootballstats.com. They looked at who were the top 3 leading rushers in the country, and those were your Doak Walker finalists. All 3 great players, okay? And this is a deep running back class, okay? So literally, like all 3 of those guys are fantastic, but pretty lazy on that committee. But I'll stop there. I give them enough. I give them enough grief on this show, and we don't want to make it all about the Doak Walker Award Committee. But anyway, you want to spin it. Dylan Sampson was fantastic, and he is going to be a big loss. And credit the offensive lineman for blocking in front of him. It wasn't all him. Certainly, it takes a whole lot more than one to tango, but man, he was phenomenal. Overall, primarily because of Dylan Sampson, Tennessee rushed for 2,936 yards this past fall. That's the second most in modern history, in program history for Tennessee. The first since 1951, where Tennessee rushed for over 3,000 yards. Tennessee, and Sampson's been a part of it for 3 of these seasons. Tennessee has logged at least 2,500 rushing yards in all 4 of the years under Josh Heupel. No other Tennessee team has had a streak like that in program history, and again, Dylan Sampson's been a big part of it. So Tennessee will have to replace Dylan Sampson. Tennessee is also losing 2 depth pieces in Cam Seldon and Khalifa Keith. And, it stinks for Cam Seldon, all right? Like everybody was excited about him. I was excited about him. He had the Deebo Samuel comparisons, the comps out of high school, wide receiver, running back, athlete. He stepped up at the end of his true freshman season when Jabari Small and Jalen Wright didn't play in the Citrus Bowl. He backed up Dylan Sampson. He ran the ball 13 times for 55 yards. And it's like, okay, well, that's kind of, you're falling forward into 2024, right, with these 2 guys. Well, lo and behold, Seldon had a cleanup surgery. He missed a little bit of time, and he really just never recovered, right? I mean, he missed some of spring, he missed some of fall, and he got jumped by a couple different guys, and it's unfortunate. He was a highly rated 4-star athlete out of the state of Virginia, and it just never transpired here for him here at Tennessee. Overall, in 2 seasons, he ran for 224 yards. And yeah, that was it. Khalifa Keith, again, was always a reserve, always a depth piece, and one-time Kentucky commit way back when. In 16 games throughout his Tennessee career over 2 years, he played 12 games, primarily on special teams as a true freshman. 4 games this past year, and he maintained a red shirt. He had 124 yards and a touchdown on 32 attempts, 3.9 yards per carry in his Tennessee career. He's going to Appalachian State. And I should have mentioned Cam Seldon has since committed to Virginia Tech closer to home. So those 2 guys were never really a factor for Tennessee at all. Even though there was a lot of hype and a lot of praise and a lot of anticipation for Cam Seldon, it just never really worked out. So those are the 3 players who were part of the running back room for Tennessee in 2024 that Tennessee does not have the luxury of using in 2025. So What does that mean? Who's coming back? Well, Tennessee's got an excellent 1-2 punch coming back in DeSean Bishop and Peyton Lewis. Are either one of those guys Dylan Sampson? No. Are either one of those guys capable of being all SEC? Yeah, we'll see. But, DeSean Bishop, again, we've talked about his story plenty of times. He's bet on himself a couple different times here at Tennessee, and he's won all those times. Now, is he an all-SEC back right now? Not yet. But he took advantage of injuries to Cam Seldon, injuries to Peyton Lewis in spring practice and in fall camp to take on that number 2 back, that role behind Dylan Sampson, and he never relinquished it. Out of nearby Carnes High School, one of the best prep running backs in the state's history, and good for DeSean Bishop. He was really, really good this year. Let's see. In 2024, he ran for 455 yards, 6.1 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns, 120 yards and 2 touchdowns on 7 carries against Kent State. He missed a significant portion of the season due to injury, but he had 65 yards on 16 attempts against Oklahoma, 10 times against NC State for 42 yards, 13 rushes in his return to action against Vanderbilt, 61 yards, 7 carries against the Buckeyes in the college football playoff. So DeSean Bishop is a nice piece to kind of start off with next year. And then, of course, you have Peyton Lewis, who I'm really, really excited about. I don't think it's going to be a one-man show like it was with Dylan Sampson. I think it's going to be more running back by committee in 2025. And Peyton Lewis, who stepped up for an injured Dylan Sampson at points and times this year, for an injured DeSean Bishop at points in time this year, after missing spring and after being incredibly limited in fall camp, I thought Peyton Lewis looked really, really good. He was the 4th leading rusher on the team, 339 yards, 64 attempts, 5.3 yards per carry. I love these yards per carry for both Bishop and Lewis. 3 touchdowns. Let's see here. 1 came against Kentucky in SEC play, 2 against UTEP. 99 yards on 10 carries against Kent State. 44 yards, 14 carries against Mississippi State. Finished the season strong against the Buckeyes when he was really the only healthy running back Tennessee had in the second half. 77 yards on 10 carries in the college football playoffs against the Buckeyes. So a really, really great start for Tennessee. A good starting point. I still believe that the Volunteers will try to add a player via the transfer portal in the backfield just to add some depth for DeSean Bishop and Peyton Lewis, along with 2 other newcomers that are set to join the fray here this spring. DeJuan Morris, Oakland High School, 5'10", 180 pounds, for a 3-star, formerly committed to Southern Cal. And, of course, Justin Baker, one of the longtime commitments in this class for Tennessee, committed to Jerry Mack way back when in October of 2023, hit it off with Darrell Sims when he was hired to take over the job. North Carolina made a late push there, but Justin Baker stayed committed and signed with Tennessee, 5'9", 200 pounds out of North Carolina as well. So I'm really excited to see what these 2 backs can do, specifically Morris. But until those guys come along, I do expect Tennessee to try and add some depth via the transfer portal. Okay, when we come back, we'll check in with Josh Ward. What does he have to say about all this happening right now with Tennessee football and the slow moving of the transfer portal? All that and more is coming up next as we continue on here with the Wednesday Locked On Vols. Josh, first leg of the offseason, I guess. It's been a little slow moving for Tennessee, especially in the transfer portal. What do you make of Tennessee's slow start in the portal? And is it enough to kind of be, if you're a fan, maybe concerned or worried?
It is enough if your goals are to be better next season, to see the offense be more explosive than it was this past season, and for Tennessee to go beyond the point that it did this past season, and that is not only getting to the college football playoff, but competing for a national championship. It's obvious that Tennessee's offense needs to be better, and it has to be better without Dylan Sampson. So that's another dynamic you're trying to figure out if you're Tennessee. So the wide receiver position has been the biggest talking point, and getting Mike Matthews back helps for sure. And he is one of the answers when we talk about how can Tennessee be better. If he's better and he plays a big role and starts to tap into the 5-star potential that was attached to his name when he arrived, that's really good for Tennessee. And Chris Brazzell can be a better player. Braylon Staley stepping into a role in year 2 could be a productive player. But they need more players. Tennessee staff needs to add more. And if you're a Tennessee fan that's excited about the idea of getting Zachariah Branch, and Tennessee doesn't really get in play there, instead he's going to your SEC opponent in Georgia, that can affect the mood as well. So there's still plenty of time to get work done, but work needs to be done.
Yeah, you look at Mike Matthews. Obviously, that was a huge storyline the last week and a half or whatever. Right up until when the transfer portal was coming to a close, and because of the holiday and all that, because it was a weekend. I mean, it was really kind of a funky timeline.
Yeah.
How all that worked out when his name was officially going to go in, but he pulls back and he doesn't go in, and I think that's huge. And I think Mike Matthews should have played a lot more this year, no doubts about it. But what about his skill set? That you saw as a freshman, I guess, leads you to believe that he can be that wide receiver one that Tennessee desperately needs next year.
Well, I think he can make tough catches. I think he can make plays down the field. We're talking so much about Tennessee's lack of downfield playmaking in the offense, and he has to go out there and has to secure the football. That was an issue this past season. It was an issue for Chris Brazzell, who's coming back, and he needs to be better there. But if we're talking about explosive plays and more playmaking at the wide receiver position, Mike Matthews probably possesses the most ability there. So let's see exactly how often he's getting the football and what kind of opportunities he really receives on the field. But projecting right now, he projects as a starter and a guy that should be getting as many targets as anybody, I think, within the offense. And if that's the case, let's see if Mike Matthews can prove a lot of people right, that he has that playmaking ability in the SEC.
You're Josh Heupel this offseason. You sit there and you see that, hey, your offense was pretty explosive in years 1 and 2 and not as explosive in years 3 and 4. I know you're not a football coach. No, neither am I, but everybody's got to be doing a self-scout. What areas of your offense are you looking to maybe change, maybe tweak, maybe to get back to scoring more points and finishing drives in the red zone like you were the first 2 years?
Well, I think Josh Heupel needs to look at what opposing defenses are doing against Tennessee and figuring out what the counter to that is, because I think oftentimes in games there hasn't been one. Think about the first half against Georgia. Tennessee came out strong. It was one of the few times Tennessee came out and played well early, but there wasn't much after that, after the first quarter, and Tennessee was able to start a drive but couldn't complete it. So the zoom out answers, I think, are you need more explosive plays. They need more success in the red zone and punching it in, scoring touchdowns. So what are the contributing factors there? Why are they not explosive enough? Sometimes it was accuracy at the quarterback position. Sometimes it was the wide receivers and the mistakes that they made, drops, the issues they had there. I would also look at what are we asking our wide receivers to do? The routes that they are running, are they running what is best for the players we're talking about, each individual guy, to succeed and have the best chance? We were looking on our show, we were looking at Zachariah Branch film, some of the highlights of what he was able to do at USC, and he ran a route that was perfect for what his skill set is, and looked at Tennessee's offense and said, I don't know that we see guys running that. That's just one example, but I think often they might find that guys are running routes that the opposing defense is able to defend without much trouble, and I would figure out what are opposing defenses seeing from us, what are they figuring out before the ball is snapped, and how can we change that heading into next season.
Defensively, Tim Banks' name is popping up in a couple different coordinator searches. I don't think there's anything there with Miami, but Clemson, it feels like he's in play there, at least from some of the folks that cover the Clemson program. He's out recruiting right now for Josh Heupel. You can see him on social media taking pictures with Tennessee commits and Tennessee targets. How big of a loss if Tim Banks were to leave Tennessee? Of course, he is on an expiring contract at the end of this month. How big of a loss would that be for Josh Heupel, and kind of where would you go to try to replace him maybe?
Well, I think it would be a big loss. He's the guy that's helped build this defense and build what Tennessee has done over the last few years. Tennessee made the college football playoff more because of the defense than the offense. And that's not to take away from what guys did offensively, like Cooper Mays, one of the best centers in the country, Dylan Sampson, one of the best running backs in the country. But obviously, Tennessee's defense was a huge part there, and keeping that cohesion, I think, would be really important. I do think that if Tim Banks were to leave Tennessee, it would probably be easier for Josh Heupel to find a defensive coordinator than it was a few years ago. And again, a few years ago, it was difficult to find one. They landed with Tim Banks, and that worked out for Tennessee. But I think Tennessee's preference should be to keep Tim Banks. I wonder if Tennessee had been more committed to him before the season. If that had been more obvious, would we be having this conversation now? That doesn't really matter at this point. But if Tim Banks were to leave, then that's a big hole to fill. Tennessee's very attractive, though, would have the resources to be able to pay a defensive coordinator to come in. But if you have to make a change, sometimes that can be good. Sometimes you can improve, but you can obviously take a step back as well.
Yeah, I think, speaking of change, it's kind of like last year with the defensive back room, how it was a complete, 180. They started over, right? Five
Yeah.
starters out, five new starters in. Ricky Gibson was really the only one that was kind of a holdover that played a little bit last year that was a part of the, plans moving forward this year, and Andre Turrentine. I feel like a lot of people were trying to compare that to the wide receivers, and maybe so. You got a little bit more there in the cupboard than you did at defensive back, but I also remember, you brought in Jamal McCoy, and he was so good. So I don't think it's such an easy comparison because right now there's not a Jamal McCoy in that wide receiver room, right?
I don't think so. Again, Mike Matthews has big time potential, but McCoy came in as a transfer, and I think very quickly after he arrived, Tennessee felt like, okay, our evaluation was good here. This guy's going to be a big time player for us pretty quickly. And I don't know who that is at wide receiver. There's a lot of Amari Jefferson talk right now as a transfer from Alabama. I can't sit here and say that he's going to make a big impact for Tennessee right away. It doesn't mean he won't be a really good player. The staff has liked him a lot as a prospect and maybe as a transfer option. But everything is true. If you say, hey, the wide receiver room could absolutely improve in 2025 from what we saw in 2024, that definitely could play out. There's a chance – I don't know if they take a real step back, but there's a chance we're having similar conversations in 2025 about, man, why aren't they hitting the explosive plays? Why aren't they getting big-time production? Where has 2022 gone? So that concern that fans have is warranted. There's still time for this to play out. There still could be names that hop on the board that Tennessee could pursue here in the next couple of weeks. So it has to play out, but the situation needs to improve because what Tennessee has right now at wide receiver is unlikely to be good enough for what Tennessee's big picture goals are in 2025.
Yep, I agree with that 100%. Final question, and we've talked about the departures from the to the transfer portal from Tennessee. Squirrel White's a very productive player. I don't think it's anything like Tennessee was trying to usher him out the door at all. Mm-hmm. Holden Stays played a whole lot of football for you. But overall, it felt like, Tennessee survived this wave, but when you see all these players and where they're announcing their commitments to in the portal, right? It's almost kind of like, okay, well, it's not like anybody's leaving you for Alabama. No one's leaving you for Georgia. No one's leaving you for Florida. You're leaving Tennessee from to go to Louisville or Appalachian State or Florida State that is coming off, a 2-3 win season. Does that help it a little bit? I mean, I feel like it helps at least for the perception a little bit, in regards to Tennessee, because, that number out there, I've seen lists like how many teams in the SEC lost players. Tennessee's got 18. Some of those are walk-ons. I recognize that. But again, it's not like Tennessee was just devastated, especially when you see guys going to the likes of Louisville and Appalachian State and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I agree with you in that Tennessee was not devastated at all. And the most important players in the roster, for the most part, are staying at Tennessee. Mike Matthews staying was the biggest deal in that conversation, aside from Nico. If Nico had left, that changes everything in the conversation. The concern, or what Tennessee at least needs to address in these losses, is replenishing depth that Tennessee was still in the middle of building. And we've talked about it at the top of the SEC this season especially, that we've seen Alabama and Georgia as the most recent examples. I would say LSU is in that conversation too, have elite talent and the most depth in college football. And that depth has not been there the last season or two for those two teams. And that's affected them on the field. So examples for Tennessee, losing Jason Jenkins on the defensive line, losing Jalen Smith at linebacker, Jordan Matthews at corner. Those are all replaceable players, but that doesn't mean it's easy to replace them. So you need guys that have been a part of the program over the last year or two to develop and be ready to go to step into those positions. Maybe they find some help through the transfer portal. They might also be asking freshmen to step in. So we can't predict injuries, but we can predict that injuries will probably occur. And if that happens and the depth gets tested and all of a sudden that third or fourth linebacker or your defensive line, the defensive line's not a big concern here, but you still want as many of those guys. If we're going to talk about how depth helps, well, if your depth is chipped away, then we have to talk about how Tennessee needs to replace that. So that's on the agenda as well. Young guys are going to have to step into bigger roles. Some freshmen might have to help, and they need to have a little injury luck next season. So if depth matters, depth has taken a hit here, I'd say, so far through the transfer portal.
Josh, what's coming up the rest of the week with your co-host Jason Swain, noon to 3 on 99.1 The Sports Animal, and, of course, on the Josh and Swain newsletter that's free Friday mornings.
Yeah, thanks. So Monday through Friday, we're back in action together. So a lot of Tennessee football talk, a lot about what needs to be done, some of the conversations we're having right here. A lot of basketball talk now as well with what's going on in conference play. So it's a lot of fun. We transition football to basketball, and things still matter for Tennessee. So 12 to 3 Monday through Friday. And that newsletter, I appreciate the link you provide. It's free each Friday morning.
Josh, thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, that is Josh Ward. What we do every single Wednesday, we call it Ward Wednesday right here on Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys for being here, making Locked On Vols a part of your morning commute, your first listen, your first watch. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Appreciate Matt Ray for stopping by the show. And we'll be back tomorrow. We'll continue this conversation with Tennessee football and a look at Tennessee basketball and its upcoming game. All that and more right here on Locked On Vols.